Hi, this is Michael Uslan. You're listening to Batman on Film.
I'm vengeance.
I have given a name to my pain.
The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill the Bat of Gotham. I'm Batman.
And hello, everyone out there in BOF land. Welcome to the BOF podcast episode. I already forgot what it was. 214. Here we
214.
go. 214. This show is a show I just said off air that has been years in the making. It's been limited to 160 characters, and that does nobody any good. We are going to discuss Batman Hush, a true classic. And I have two wonderful people here to discuss this with. One is a person who I podcast often with, a good friend of mine, Mr. Ryan Haas. How are you, sir?
Hello, I'm so good. I'm so excited to be on yet another Pete Verra hosted Batman on Film podcast. I feel like you're in your podcast era, Pete.
This is fantastic. I've been wanting to, like, Lauer knows how much I've wanted to do this show. And then in the other corner, the big Dukaroo, the editor-in-chief, the founder of Batman on Film, ladies and gentlemen, Bill Jett Ramey. Bill, how are you, sir?
I'm good. That's the first time I've ever witnessed the whatever, this
is the first time you saw the Mad Dog?
It's something.
Yeah, first time I saw that, and
it's fun. It's good. Get the blood flowing, get the juices ready. We're about to talk some Batman, some capes, some tights,
Hush being a classic is subjective, so we are going to talk about it. So let's go.
And
let's go.
That's
lead this thing.
This is great.
You're leading it. Yeah.
Bill has been on Twitter with he is leading the charge with the Hush is overrated, and you seem to be in the minority, actually, when you say that. So that's really kind of what sparked my whole interest in this. Is because, like I said, it's always been kind of limited to how many characters we can fit in a tweet or an X, whatever it's called these days, about Hush. So I really would love to get into a good discussion about it. The book is 20 years old, or the story is 20 years old. We're at the tail end of the anniversary. So I figure, we've been pretty much preoccupied with Michael Keaton and the Flash to really get into this, it feels like. But now that is come and gone, we can focus on other Batman stuff, and I think Hush should jump to the top of the list because it is a subjective topic whether it's a classic or not.
I have, before we get into it, and since you brought it up about Michael Keaton and the Flash,
you have a new theory on why it bombed.
Just a part of witty banter. I don't know how much witty banter. Well, y'all do quite a bit of witty banter on the podcast, and Which a thought crossed my mind yesterday. I don't. One thought. So had to do with Keaton and Batman, and y'all know. I mean, I gave the Flash a good review. I liked it quite a bit. I ended up admitting that I was wrong about thinking how much Keaton's return would generate excitement for the film. Apparently it did not that much. I probably let the nostalgia of it influence me. Or nevertheless, I still liked it quite a bit. But is it kind of I don't know if you want to call it poetic justice, but is there a little bit of like it was a fitting in for the DCEU Snyderverse, whatever you want to call it, to just go out with a whimper despite everything?
I mean, in a way, yeah. I mean, it just kind of
It opened kind of similar. It closed a similar what fashion the way it opened. Just
well, yeah. I mean, it regardless. I mean, it shows James Gunn and company that they're making the right calls by they're already on the right track by ending what was there before instead of like leading up to yet another giant thing or multiple projects and spinoffs and stuff. Yeah, like they already knew writing was on the wall, and the performance of the movie just kind of confirmed it. Unfortunately, for some.
Yeah,
it's time to move on. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. I just thought that. Then it wasn't on my mind to talk about it. And Pete mentioned the Flash and Keaton, and I remembered that one single thought I had yesterday. I have one thought a day, y'all. That's it. And that was just want to share that one with you.
All right. I'll start with Man of Steel, and I'll end it with Man of Steel in the desert. Right?
Can't get away from Man of Steel.
Yeah,
that's
all they should have done was made a sequel to Man of Steel.
Yeah, that's the one thing they should have done instead of centering everything else around it.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Woulda, coulda, shoulda, whatever. Let's get into Hush, boys. Ryan, you kind of lean more towards my side. You kind of think that this is not only is it a big event, it's a kind of a turning point for Batman. It draws in audience. It's almost bigger than life in a sense. I think this almost might be like an age group thing, Bill. Like I think your generation of Bat fans may dislike this for some more of the fantastical elements, as opposed to, let's say, some of the stuff that you normally kind of like.
Yeah,
the more grounded, grittier takes. Let's say, like, there's that G word again, but more like like my favorite storyline of all time, for example, is No Man's Land. I know Haas is Nightfall. So we grew up in a time where this was probably the first big event for Batman in a long time, right? Probably since No Man's Land. Land. Yeah,
Well, let me I will clarify that I don't dislike Hush. That's a false narrative.
No, never said that. The status.
I'm not a hater, but I cannot put it up there with a lot of other Batman stories that are classics. I think there's I think you hit a little bit of it. The generational thing, I think does have something to do with it. Also, I think there's also kind of there's this mantra, like, oh, Hush is a classic. And then people it just kind of steamrolls and and people, oh, I gotta read Hush because it's one of the classics. And I just don't know what is in it that would put it up there with a Dark Knight Returns or a Batman Year One. Not to just go with Frank Miller stuff, but those are definitely classics.
Yeah, that's
Long Halloween. There you go. That's same writer. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I still, when someone comes up to me and they ask me, hey, what's a Batman book? I usually say Year One. I say start from the beginning. But if I'm going to give them like 5 things to read, there's a 95% chance that Hush is in that group there. Like I think Hush is it's easily a top 10 Batman book because of what it does characterization wise, what it does detective wise with the character, how he's trying to figure out this long mystery, and the interactions, I think, within the greater Gotham City realm. You get Robin, you get Nightwing, Catwoman. I mean, even Huntress,
Superman,
yeah, which might be some of the best stuff within the book.
And I would say that's all reasons why it's more than just
tough
Batman,
because like when you say top 5 Batman books, I think Year One and Dark Knight Returns are always going to be in there, and that's kind of hard for Batman as a whole, and it kind of does the character a disservice because those 2 books are so transcendent in what they did to the comic book industry that it's hard. They represent the 0.0001% of comic books, and those are books that you can give to somebody who hasn't and never will read comic books on the regular, and they will still enjoy it, and they're on literary 100%. Lists and things like that. but it's tough because like you don't. Although I would recommend those books to people getting into comics and getting into Batman, it's almost you need to give those books to those people with a disclaimer like every book's not like this. Like this is not
Returns
representative
is
of
so
all the books. And,
deconstructive, you know.
yeah, and so if you discount those, like Hush is, I feel, a much better representation of what Batman on the whole has to offer in terms of like what you're going to get out of most comic book, or it's like aspirational, right? It's like what you would hope to get out of a story that incorporates this many characters and this many elements, and
that's
that
something
kind
that
of thing.
Loeb has done in the past with Batman. I mean, if you look at his other two, let's say masterpiece works, Long Halloween and Dark Victory, those are ensemble pieces. That's like Loeb's thing. To be brutally honest,
like it's the other side of the coin,
gallery,
you know,
in the story.
Yeah, it's like you have Frank Miller who has his two, you know, Dark Knight Returns in year one, and then you have Loeb who has the you know, the Long Halloween books in that series, and then Hush, and that's kind of his side of that coin.
I always kind of pictured this as a trilogy, you know, Long Halloween, Dark Victory, Hush. Like I feel like Loeb just is immersed in this world with all these characters, and that's another thing. Is just, you know, you're getting like, you've already gotten two pieces of this by him, and then to me have this really kind of, and then you incorporate it with a little bit of Superman in there and how he does that part. That's one of my favorite parts of the book. And I'm reading that and I'm like, oh man, I know Bill's not going to enjoy this, but I just love the tactician that Batman is and how he plans that whole segment of the book out, from the tunnels and LexCorp, you know, to having Lois on standby ready with Catwoman. Like I dig that. This is kind of my ideal version of Batman. He's slightly a jackass, you know,
but not as much of the a-hole Batman as like a No Man's Land or murderer. Yeah.
So
I will say that just to, like, where I'm coming from with Hush, I didn't read it when it was coming out monthly in Batman, because that was
I think that's huge, to be honest.
That was a period where I was not reading comics regularly on a consistent basis, and I came to it because like the proclamations, you know, that it's a classic. And
so did you read it?
This is not too long.
The 2 volumes, or did you read it in one? Like, because originally it was printed volume 1, volume 2. Like you could never buy the whole story.
I have that. Here's volume 1.
The blue and the green. Yeah,
here's
that's what I had.
2. So I picked this up a few years after it was out.
So this is published between September 2002 and October 2003, I believe.
I'm trying to see when this it says.
That might even be late because it was hardcover first, I think.
So I bought the trades. I
picked these up probably sometime like during the Dark Knight trilogy era. Probably around maybe it's not, you know, Hush had been out, you know,
like 2 years,
4 years, you know. It's not.
You're probably picking it up.
It's not.
This was 2003.
It wasn't like 20 years ago, or, you know, 30 or 40.
See, I was a sophomore in college. Yeah, I was a sophomore in college.
So I'm, you know, to be honest, I kind of got away from the comics because I'd grown tired of the big events, the crossovers with like you having to read, 20 something different titles to follow along with these huge storylines, and which started with Nightfall. And it's one of the reasons I can, you know, Nightfall. Yes. I don't mind Nightfall. I was reading that, you know, as it came. I was reading comics then. It was like the whole thing afterward, you know, Night Quest and Night's End was just, I'm like, and then there was the Superman.
See, that's funny. That's all
Superman and
Nightfall
the Reign of Superman. And I was like, okay, this is just too much, you know. Just
it's ironic because of how Hush is constructed as like 12 issues just by Batman once a month.
It is. It's a self-contained story,
and it's so you know, because I grew up, I'd go get an issue, and,
And that
there
was
was
it.
your
That was the
story.
story.
That's your story. You know, start, middle, end. But so yeah, there may be some generational thing with that. But so like I said, I'm having people. Oh, you know, you read you get online and you read, you know, top 10 Batman stories. So I probably did research like, okay, what have I missed out on? Okay. And so you know, year one, Dark Knight Returns and blah, blah, blah. And then there's always Hush up there. I'm like, well, I got to check out this Hush. So I get it. Like I was showing y'all, I mean, this is audio, but y'all.
Did you buy them together?
Yes.
The volumes? See, that was my first mistake. I didn't.
Yeah.
I ended up
bought
only
them
buying
together,
one volume.
and I read it and I went, it's okay. There's no, this is what's all the proclamation that this is some you know, Batman classic. And I'm like, I just can't go there with Hush still, you know. I think Heart of Hush is better. That's a better story to me than
they're both really good in my opinion. I do like Heart of Hush a lot. I mean, it's hard to argue with Dini.
Yeah.
For me, the amount of just deception and detective work throughout the story is really a drawing point for me. And coming to like the book's end and realizing like Hush is almost this, like I've kind of been just tricked throughout the. I know it's interesting how it gets there, but for me, by the end, how it's actually a Riddler story, that's kind of like a mind f for me. Like with those few panels where Batman's in the asylum and he's talking to the Riddler, that's kind of mind blowing for me. Like I don't know about you guys. Like there's a lot of this book where I'm like, it's kind of the way it's set up. I'm like reading it, and then I have to like, I come to the end and I'm like, whoa, this is heavy. There's a lot to process.
I mean, the whole time I'm reading it, I'm like, the freaking, you know, and I knew nothing really. I mean, it was obvious to me that Thomas Elliot was Hush, and then it just seems so like it's one of those, you know, when you watch a movie and there's an ending and then there's this
real
ending, you know, twist and whatnot, and it just seems like it was obvious there was something more, even when Hush gets shot by Harvey Dent and falls in the ocean. Very classic, you know, 1940s Joker style. You know, Joker falls and comes back, and you know, Joker returns in the same issue, but whatever. It just, it was felt like there was something more coming, and then it was like the Riddler was all over it, and then you get, it just was kind of too predictable. You
thought it was predictable? For me, it's like, I don't know.
I just felt
left field.
I felt like that ultimately
it makes me, it reminds me of Rises.
It wouldn't be a big
kind of, yeah, in a way.
Yeah,
it reminds me of Rises.
There'd be somebody else, you know.
And Riddler is Talia. Like that's another part where like, I look back at it now and I can compare. I'm like, oh, I didn't see this in the movie at the time, you know. Like I'm watching it, so like I get vibes of that, and you know, I will say like the fact that Loeb had the balls to bring back one of the greatest Batman characters of all time after such a long hiatus, and then to kill him is I mean, the cojones on this man. Bringing back my guy Harold Allnut as basically the reason to how this all started, like the forgotten character of the Penguin Affair returns in this crazy fashion. And like, as a DC fan, like I appreciate the pull there. Like I don't know about you guys, but I'm just picking out things that I just really enjoy and I love talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. He's like the Tom Bombadil of Hush.
Who?
People that read Lord of the Rings will know what I'm talking about. It's like the character that comes out of left field, and if you're a mega fan, you're like, oh, this is, oh my gosh. But if you don't know who that is, and he just shows up, you're like, what? I remember when I read this as a kid, I was like, wait, who? And I love Nightfall, and he's in Nightfall, right?
Yeah.
But it took me because when he does show up, he's like,
I lost
like
it.
healed and he's like better, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
well,
then
that
you
was
have to
like
get
what
all
Tommy
the
was
extra.
doing.
Yeah, you have to get all the extra backstory on it and everything, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, but
Yeah.
the whole story play. I mean, to be fair, the whole story plays with Batman continuity and history, and you get more out of it if you're familiar with a lot of that stuff.
It
too.
does. I mean, it is. It's like there's like a mini Batman history lesson throughout.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
fair? Does that make
Almost
sense?
like in each
Well,
issue.
that's
it
why I think it's a
speaks to
good book
Batman
to
in different
recommend to
ways.
people.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Because
it's
it stars.
it
No,
comes
sorry.
off to me, it just comes off like extra what's the word I'm looking for? It's just like, okay, I don't need all of this extra in there, this I get it, and then Batman, the way a lot of times the way he talks, like it's in handwriting, and it's like, Tim Drake, Robin, Teen Wonder. I mean, I'm like, Batman really talks like that? Does he write like that? Come on. And there's just some things like that.
I see the Keaton Batman doing that. Like Keaton always said his Batman said less. Like he would always write less dialogue in the movie or whatever. He'd take dialogue out. Like I feel like this Batman is he's just direct to the point, like no BS, like no trimming the fat. Here we go. That's
and
how
he says a lot in Hush, right? He's like the narrator.
But it's all internal monologue, don't you think? Like you're kind of going through it with him.
Yeah.
How do you?
I mean, that style ended up being so popular that's what led into Loeb's Batman Superman series, where it was like issues and issues of Batman and Superman doing things with their dialogue, being contrasted between the two.
Yeah. No, it was definitely like a thing he picked up on and kind of ran with, like in I don't know, in artistic, we just thing to roll with. I don't know what exactly we call it.
Artistic choice, if you will.
Yeah, that's it. How would you guys feel about the Bat Cat relationship in the story? I think this is a good I think it set the modern precedent really for what guys like Tom King would do later on and things like that.
Oh, definitely.
I
like it. In my mind, in my Batman fandom, Bruce ends up with Selina. That's
I'm with you.
I like Rises so much, is that's one of the, not the reason, but it's one of the reasons, that Bruce Wayne gets a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want that for Batman. So I really this is one aspect, probably if I could say what did you really like about it? I like the dynamic, Selina Bruce dynamic.
It's almost like this way has kind of gotten lost within a lot of the recent Batcat stuff. I'm reading this, I'm like, man, this is really good. I dig how he's letting her in and all this. And
I mean, really, it's the backbone of the story, but it kind of doesn't get talked about maybe as much. But in the animated adaptation, that's one element that I was glad that they really leaned in on more.
Yeah.
And when I watched, I was like, whoa, is it that heavy in the book? And it is, but there's 87 other things going on in the book. So, but yeah, and that's where the inner dialogue actually really helps, because you have a lot of different
that's fair
moments in the book where he's talking about how he feels in his head more than he can project it. But then you get some other characters, you have Talia and Nightwing and Tim even start to mention and talk about how that relationship is affecting Bruce during
Alfred says it to her directly in the cave. They have a little back and forth, and she kind of tries to put Alfred in his place, and he's just like, hey, look, I get you, but it's like there's one. What was it? He's like, I've mended broken bones, I've taken bullets out, I've healed his scars. There's one thing I can't do is fix a broken heart. And it's like they kind of had this one moment, and it's weird because you're like, man, yeah, Batman, he has a heart.
Doesn't Alfred also tell her, is it keep doing what you're doing, or somewhere that he
me, and he's like, no, it's total opposite actually.
Yeah.
And they all kind of agree with him to Alfred, except all Bat family in general, because there's a lot of them in here, even at one point Batman and Robin kind of stage an argument to I'm trying
Yeah,
to like.
I love that part.
It's one of the best parts of the book because I
Yeah.
think it's so believable until Robin's like, "Do you think she bought it?" You
Yeah.
know, it's one of those great aspects.
It's
of the book.
believable. Like you read it and you're like, wait a second. Cause I'm reading, I'm like, that's not how they would really act. I'm like, Tim Drake would never do that. You
Yeah. Oh,
know,
he's
and then
written so
you
out
and
of
then you
character.
and then you're like, oh, that's actually perfect, you know.
It's all a ploy.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things I wanted to discuss was the big reveal in the graveyard. I figured this is going to be a very hot topic. So the quote unquote return of Jason Todd in the cemetery, which I
Jason
kind
Todd
of
Inception. It's
yeah,
like once the cat was out of the bag, that was never
yeah,
not going to happen.
it's kind of like when it's like when Snyder walks into the WB and he's like, well, what happens if we put Batman in the movie? And everyone's like, yes, that's it, let's do it. You know, it's like Jason Todd's back, which in its own right, I think goes to another classic tale, Under the Hood, because that's a book that I don't want to like, but I can't help but enjoy because it's actually written so well. So
Yeah,
credits to Judd and company. But yeah, like the return of the quote unquote return of Jason Todd was pretty crazy at the time. Like I don't know.
Oh,
and
it was, yeah.
Okay,
you
give me.
so,
I
like,
need
let me on it.
context here. All right.
Yeah.
So this is Under the Red Hood is after Hush.
Yes.
Comes
correct?
after,
Yes.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
It happens
So
because
this-
of Hush, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're kind of they took
They're
that
linked.
and went with it
Yeah.
with the Under the Hood. Okay. Yeah, I'm always of the opinion that I don't like when especially in Batman's world, dead characters return and whatever. But it's I just was like, I was kind of really meh on it. Yeah. And it being Clayface, and it's just like, come on, you know, and there got to be a little bit too much of these bait and switch type things going on.
They do that a lot throughout the 12 issues.
You know, in here, you know, and
Yeah.
it was I felt them coming. That's another thing. You know, I've mentioned before, it felt predictable. A lot of the, even like I said, I didn't know it would be the Riddler ultimately, you know, heading it and be the mastermind, but I knew there was someone else.
You knew somebody was pulling
Hush.
strings.
I mean, yeah, exactly. It didn't it didn't feel like that was the end of the whole deal. There was more to this after Hush died, like I said, and I just got too much like bait and switch type stuff, you know.
Awesome.
Yeah, once you get to the back half of the series, it is like every issue is like Hush could be this person, Hush could be that person, and you'll start to see like different characters like say the word Hush. You know, you're like, oh, Catwoman said it. Oh, you know, Scarecrow.
Yes.
I remember, I think it's like back-to-back issues where you have the one issue where Hush takes the bandages off and you're like, oh, it's Harvey Dent,
It's
and
somebody
he's like,
else.
healed.
Yeah.
And then the next issue is when you get the Jason Todd reveal. But that, to me, that issue where with the Jason Todd fight or quote unquote Jason Todd fight in the graveyard, that's probably the most memorable moment of the run for me, because, you know, my history with the book is like very much the complete opposite of Bill. You know, I was like 15 when this came out, so I was like the perfect age for it.
First part-time job, ready to spend some cash.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember like we had the place I got the issues was like in a storage container comic book shop behind a fast food place, and I traded in a whole bunch of like PlayStation 2 games and stuff to have store credit so I could buy the issues as they came out.
I love these stories.
I knew you'd love that, Pete. I've been saving that for it. So that, I mean, I have a very vivid memory. You would go in there and you would see like the rack of like new issues, and just, you know, every month it'd be like, I'd be asking like, okay, what day does Batman come out? What day is it? You know, so I would be able to get it that day. And I want to say I I mean, Hush is what is responsible for me becoming a monthly comic book reader, like a subscription comic book reader. Before that, I would just like get stuff in trades or get stuff in back issues or whatever. But that's what made me.
You knew that Wednesdays you're going in the shop.
Yep, that's what made me Hush is what made me a comic book reader month to month, like for live.
I don't think we've seen anybody react like this to Batman Monthly the way Hush was since. I think Court of Owls is the only thing you really compare it to. Like they're very similar with what they generated for the character, the buzz,
the sales increase was pretty nuts for Hush. Yeah, like so, like I remember. So I think I don't know if I started Hush like it was maybe 2 or 3 issues in is when I started realizing like, oh, this is a huge deal. Okay, I need to be in on this. And what was crazy about it was that you did feel like you got to. It was like perfect comics. You got just enough story every month to like read it and discuss it and, you know, try to be like, what's going to happen next? And from other friends that I had talked to at the time or the people in the shop, they said that vibe was very similar to what the Long Halloween felt like. Because it was like the drip feed, 1 issue a month, very like slow stories, you know, spread.
Always on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, so like I remember like it was like, oh, like it's gonna be Jason Todd. It's gotta be Jason Todd, and they're gonna bring him back because Hush is on the building and like it says Robin on the building and stuff like that. So that was a cool thing to do, and the art is so good, of course, by Jim Lee that you can like just pour through it every issue. So experiencing the story that way made a huge influence on how like it affected me and how excited I was. And so I remember when I was most excited about that. Well, I was scared for the Joker issue because I'm like, oh, he's gonna kill him, and of course he doesn't.
Yeah.
And then the issue with the dead Robin on the cover, and you're like, okay, this is it. This is like this is something huge is gonna happen on this issue. So it was just, I remember people being really, even though it wasn't Jason Todd, as far as we knew at the time.
Well, not actually. That's
yeah, I know.
Retroactively,
it ended up being Jason Todd for a minute. But just that buzz it created and the discussion was you know that you're right, Pete. Like that's not. It feel like it permeated out from like the just getting a comic book every month and whatever.
I mean, them bringing back Jason Todd went the complete opposite of the way I thought it would go. I thought it would fizzle out and it would be nothing and it wouldn't amount to anything. But the fact that you not only do you get Under the Red Hood, but the character has gone on to become one of the most popular DC characters currently. Like the state of Jason Todd Red Hood fandom is at heights I never expected the character to ever reach, ever. And it all started with this book. He really has
there's a Jason
there
Todd.
Are huge amounts of Red
Hood fandom.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's like DC's
they
Punisher,
can't kill him again.
kind of. Yeah. It's like he hits a very specific like fandom that really wants that like anti-hero.
His Red Hood is above and beyond more popular and interesting than his Robin ever was. You know, like I always said, Jason Todd's death was more important to the Batman mythology than his life. You know, like he never should have been brought back. I always stood pat on that.
Yeah.
It's crazy how huge he is. Like I can't believe it. And it all started with this, and it just come. He's had numerous titles on his own. He's led numerous teams within the DCU. He's really taken off, and it's actually kind of shocking because he's easily the 4th best Robin behind Stephanie Brown.
But he got to be, you know, he's one of the marquee characters in like 3 Jokers, you know, because of the way Joker affected him. So it like keeps him cemented in that, you know, the Batman mythos that way.
Let me ask y'all a question.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
Please.
I'll throw this out and we can discuss. Is the hype for Hush, is Jim Lee's artwork part of why it's could be overinflated is in terms of it's a classic? Because I would say Jim Lee's artwork is classic. It's fantastic. It's splash. It's great. It kind of made Jim Lee, at least at DC in a way. So there's a lot of times when you talk about that, that's one of the first things people mention is Jim Lee's art, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a huge. It's probably like 70-30. It's just
I think you're doing a huge disservice.
well,
Making the
yeah,
claim.
for comic book readers, yes, but that's what. But let's be fair. Comic books are a visual medium.
Mhm.
Art is what brings new readers in most of the time. That brings the people off the street, right?
No, I
You
agree.
know, it's the movie poster, and
I
then you
mean,
see
the
the
image
thing,
of
and then
Batman and Nightwing on the rooftops has been a staple of DC convention. It's
yeah,
everywhere.
how many
You know?
Exactly. That's a lot of,
statues
yeah.
and yeah, and DC themselves, books become like these pillars also because of like the way DC promotes them and makes money off of them, right? So like, of course, Hush is always going to be in people's minds because DC will continues to republish it and make toys out of it and make statues out of it.
Animated
That's a
movies.
great point.
Animated movies out of it. I mean,
It's very
Yeah.
profitable.
you would think that like the Batman Who Laughs would probably have to be in the top 10 just because of how often DC promotes
It's a
it.
good
So
point.
like you've got things like that and Court of Owls and
McFarlane
things.
just announced a new action figure this week.
We'll see. There you go. I mean,
Yeah.
like that's
That's a
what
great-
reason it's so commercially easy to like keep it.
I'm with you. It's
there.
Is that
I'm
do you
with
think that
I'm with Haas. I mean,
is
it's
that
100.
why you don't
It's
see like a lot of long Halloween stuff because sales art is a little bit unique in a sense, whereas Jim Lee's is kind of more stylized and digestible.
okay. Let's pause this podcast for just a moment for these words from our sponsors. Probably. But
the
I would,
Joker was out there.
just to piggyback off of what Ryan said, it's almost like it's an inorganic Batman classic because of DC has pushed it. It's like DC said, we're going to make this a classic. And so,
and that's
they
how
really-
it felt like when it came
they
out too.
hyped,
It was like
you know?
marketed that way. Like you have to read this book. This
Yeah.
is the thing.
Well, doesn't that
Yeah.
kind of fit the term a modern classic, instant classic? Like wouldn't someone like myself make that argument saying like, yeah, well, it because that's what it is. Like for me, look, Lee's artwork is fantastic, but like I said earlier in the show, like every time I reach an ending, this is just me. I have to like take a break, digest what I saw. I think Loeb's writing is on par with. I think it might
It's
be a
so
little
good.
bit better than
I
Victor.
love it. Yeah.
Like I don't want to discredit Loeb just because Jim Lee probably had an all-time year and did the best artwork of his life. Like I think Loeb's writing is still very good.
It's amazing. We don't get the Batman,
Netflix
Matt Reeves
Loeb.
Batman without Jeff Loeb. You know?
Well, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, well, we don't the trilogy as well, so there's a lot that goes into that. But yeah, I don't like discrediting Loeb because for me, I'm sucked into the story.
No,
entirely.
not at all.
I'm
But
not-
I'm like, that's the art is more of the reason why it's like
It's iconic.
grabbed
I can't
hold of
lie.
because like you had like how many millions of copies of Jim Lee's X-Men got sold in the 90s,
Yeah.
right? Like he was already a household name, and then this is the first giant thing that he was able to do for DC. And to their credit, a big part of comic books as they come out to maintain the momentum is the cadence and the consistency of the releases. It was one single issue a month. It wasn't some crazy, it's crossover. So people could that were interested could just come in and be like, get the issues. But even then, it was I remember it being such a big deal. It was hard for people to get issues. I remember like the comics could not keep the issues on the stands, and they kept having to get like second printings and third printings and stuff like that because people would come in and have to buy issues of comics and stuff like that. Yeah.
To be fair, I'm not by saying the artwork with Jim Lee is kind of, the go-to selling point. It seems like, especially nowadays, and you're right, the posters and the things that DC uses as marketing. The Funko Pops, and then you go to Comic-Con,
the Burbank statue.
You go to
based on
Comic-Con,
Hush,
and it's that a lot of the stuff that you see there, as the big huge billboard-esque posters at the DC area was always
I'm sure
from
Jim Lee
Hush.
loves to be surrounded by his own work.
Obviously, I mean, isn't he like the ball? He's one of the bosses, but
He runs the show.
But I'm not
basically.
discrediting. I'm not discrediting Jeff Loeb at all. I'm a big. I mean, look, I love Long Halloween, and I like Hush, but I can't. I just can't ever go. I can't go with the. To me, it's hyperbolic with it. This is it's a classic. I mean, like it's up there on a level of, because I don't know what it's. I say, okay, what is its legacy? What's
It's
the
tough
legacy
because
of it?
well, it's tough because when you say, I'm always of two minds on that discussion of like,
Yeah.
well, if is it a classic in a vacuum by itself, or is it a classic because of like the work or the effect of the work?
Yeah.
And when you
I think it's a
both of those
combination of everything you said.
well, it kind of probably should be. And for me, it does hit both of those because really, like Hush, really, I mean, I've thought about this a lot, in the weeks leading up to this, but like Hush is kind of the cornerstone of like modern comic book storytelling in a lot of ways, in terms of like how the characters like interact and how
God, I love you.
how the writer artist combo, how it gets promoted to like the mainstream and stuff like that. Like you talk about Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, Joker's Five-Way Revenge, like that, like redefine the character and not all that kind of stuff. But like I feel like Hush, especially for Batman, is like you do everything modern today, like Court of Owls, Tom King's entire run, like you don't get that's it's all like a branch, and like Hush is right there at the top. Heart of Hush, like all that stuff kind of like comes from how
I will concede that point. I believe that is correct. That would be it had a impact on comic books going forward. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah.
I like you brought up the Joker's Five-Way Revenge, Batman 251. Probably my favorite single Batman story. It's a classic, not because of, we know I have the poster, as the cover is a poster. Everyone knows that cover. Even when I talked about it on with Lauer on his show, Batman Book Club, shout out to Ryan Lauer, that I said, maybe more people know that issue because of that poster, other than opposed to the story. But the story is a classic because it reintroduced the Joker and brought back the Joker as what we know him, as we've known him for the last almost 50 years. The dark, the killer, the crazy, his original 1940 incarnation. He'd gone, so yes, when I say I would put that up there because it's a classic for that historical reason. I don't know historically with Batman itself what Hush's did. I think Hush is the Hush character is not. He's not to me an A-list Batman character. And y'all can
I
disagree.
agree with you in that sense, but I also don't think the story's. Again, to me, it's the return of the Riddler in grand fashion. It's distracting Batman so much that he can't think properly, and he can't even.
Did it change?
He almost ignores the clues right in front of him. Like to me, it's a very good Riddler story.
It didn't change the Riddler character that much, if at all. I mean, the Riddler was the Riddler in there. Maybe he was used as
but at the time they mentioned that he had he had brain tumor,
had cancer.
He had cancer.
And Batman even mentions is like, I figured he'd been retired by now. Like he's kind of a joke.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it was kind of like the reinvention and rebirth of the Riddler in a sense. Like I know he was still the Riddler, but like it attempted to do what what Five-Way Revenge did for Joker in a sense with the Riddler. With the grand scheme. Like Batman really has been put through that type of trial and tribulation since Bane and Nightfall, in my opinion.
I would
that whole mind F.
I'll give you that Ryan brought up Scott Snyder and Court of Owls. I think the Court of Owls is a legit. I'm not saying Court of Owls is a classic, but I would say I would entertain that story as being a classic because the Court of Owls is a pretty powerful, pretty significant new quote unquote villain
Yeah.
if you will, for
How many
Batman.
times have we seen them in other
Well,
media?
that's what I'm saying. It's like,
much
from
more than Hush. That's like I don't like people are.
they're more malleable than Hush is, and I feel like
Yeah.
from a DC, me and Pete have been talking about this too. I think from a DC angle, like we talked about how, it's easy for DC to market Hush and things like that as a story, artwork wise and things.
Mhm.
But from
Also,
the DC,
Batwoman season 3.
well, like what I'm saying, from the DC licensing angle, Court of Owls is so malleable where they can be like, oh yeah, put him in this video game, put him in this TV show, put him in that TV show. How many non-Batman things have they shown up in, like Gotham and Gotham Knights and Gotham Knights TV show and things like that. So they're popular and modern enough to where it's like it feeds that loop. You want to read more about the Court of Owls? Like, read the book.
They're very popular. Yeah, I will agree to that. I will agree that the Court of Owls was definitely it came out of the Court of Owls and it hasn't stopped. Almost kind of like the Batman Who Laughs.
It feels like by the time you get to the end of Hush, the story, it feels like, it's more about Batman as a character and his process through the mystery than like who Hush is anyway. Because once you find it out, the story's kind of over. And I'm like, and I feel like the same way, like in Court of Owls. Like Court of Owls kind of ended on a whimper for me too. I'm like, well, what the hell happens now? Like, okay. Was that really whatever? So Hush is kind of similar. And it's funny because, although we've had multiple sequels to Hush, it's never been directly by Loeb. But then you read like the 20th anniversary edition and there's kind of like this tag at the end where they're saying like it'll be continued, and you're like, well, what does that mean? What are they?
That's
what are
the
they
version
do?
I read for this, so it was fun to read that because it was like, oh, I forgot about this. I knew this happened, and I was glad it was finally. We'll see what happens if anything comes out of it, but
so it's like a whole extra scene, and you're like, well, what does this mean? Knowing that there's already stuff that happens after that.
There's been a lot of retconning post Hush, right? Let's just be honest.
Well,
a lot of things have changed.
Yes.
Post the story.
I do get from listening to you two talk about it. I appreciate it. I appreciate snapshots in Batman history and what age you were when this happened and how it impacted you and your Batman fandom. And it's like me and a way the Batman, the 60s TV series. Because it was like I was the perfect age for it when it hit reruns. And I am nostalgic and love it because it's literally what made me a Batman fan. I would not be here talking to you today without that series. And there are now it is a classic. It is a very important part of Batman history. So maybe that's a poor description or example, but you get what there are. But I'm saying there are Batman fans who don't like that Batman, at all, and the history of it kind of. I guess a lot of this boils down to me when it comes to what's a classic, what's not, is where does it sit in Batman history? What is its place? How important?
Yeah.
What was the effect?
Well, it's like that you bring me back to where I was at the time, 15-year-old kid. The last Batman movie I saw was when I was in 5th grade, and that was Batman and Robin, and Batman Begins was 2 years away.
Okay.
So that was that I had to grow up in that crazy period between 97 and 2005 where like you had to work to be a Batman fan as a kid.
Sure.
Like you had
you had to put in the work?
You had to put in the work, Pete. That's right. Like, and so I remember when this book came out, it was like this validation of like, oh my, like I always knew Batman was awesome. Like here's like here's like a very legitimate, like awesome thing. Yeah. Well, it just felt like really cool to finally like have this really like amazing thing to go to the comic book shop every month and get into that felt like it was a good, like and the other people were paying attention to also, like, oh, now everybody else is coming in to see how awesome I know Batman is. And then of course I just continued after Begins came out.
Because you know how people are when you say something, you critique or maybe not like something that they love. That's, like sometimes it's hard for people to get out of their little bubble, fandom
like
in a lot of
people on
ways.
Twitter?
And I don't
let's start critiquing
understand
Riddler
why
into that.
you don't, like what I like. But my I guess what I'm trying to say is that y'all can hear me say, you two, when I say I can't put Hush as a classic. I'm not shitting all over Hush. I'm not saying it's a piece of crap, trash. And that's how a lot of people take it when I say
Bill on the internet doesn't like what I like.
It's not a classic. And there's like, how is it not a classic? Because I can tell how much it means to you both at the time you read it and how it impacted you. And I love that. And I know there's probably things about Batman that I like and love that y'all could say, well, I don't get that, but I don't take offense.
Oh, Brave and the Bold. I don't know how. Brave and the Bold and Bill still confused the hell out of me.
My favorite animated Batman
episode
series.
with Blue Beetle, and I'm like, Bill likes this.
It was.
I'll never forget that.
You're turning this into
time
the Brave
that
and
show.
Bold discussion, but yes, it
Pushed
took
you on.
me. The more I got, the more because I was reviewing those episodes.
There wasn't
and
much going on that time.
And I went into it, thinking, this is not for me. I'm not going to like this. And I end up, at the end, I mean, before the end, I'm just hooked. And at the end, I'm going, this is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen Batman in my life, because of the history, again, the history, the love of, and the nods to Batman history and the mythos and all of that, and DC too as well. With
that's why I love Hush so much, because it's like Hush said earlier. Hush said earlier in the show. There's like a little bit of Batman history in this. I think if you hand this book to any new reader, it's so digestible, it's so malleable. Like it's a really self-contained Batman story that it does feature the larger rogues gallery of Batman and his associates, but you hand it to someone like, this is Batman. This is quintessential Batman, in my opinion.
If I can totally agree that you just give it to somebody, who would be great for this? Announcer Rachel. I just give it to her and read this.
Well, I thought the other day, it's like, I watched the social hour, and she was like, I didn't like Batman Year One. What the hell was that?
Yeah, that's about as easy to read as.
And we've been talking about this. I'm like, well, I wonder what she would think about Hush, because that's like, a different gateway.
I'm honest. I mean, honestly, I had never had talked to someone about it and them bring me that reason why they didn't like it. That I didn't like the fact that Jim Gordon, I didn't like him because he wasn't loyal to his wife. I mean, that's totally, I think, female wife, girl perspective. And I'd never looked at Year One like that. And then I'm thinking, they might have been not a great plot choice or character choice.
See, I'm looking at him like that just makes him so much more real.
That's how I still interpret it. But that's
that's what makes Year One different. Like the fact that Year One even went there for a comic book, you're kind of like, wow, Frank. All right. I'm fine with, and I wouldn't want it to be changed. But now we're getting into Year One from Hush. Well, Essen's a big part too. Like Essen takes on. Yeah. Well, no, that's what these comic books do. Like you get a character like Essen in Year One, and then later on, decades later, No Man's Land pays huge dividend. Like in ways that Barbara Gordon never did, in a sense, motivating the character and changing him so on and so forth.
My point was, and I didn't get to it. I don't think it was just that. Like brought her up, her to read it. Is I don't know if you can just drop someone into that. That's really not. Now, of course, granted, she knows more than the average general audience woman about Batman than most through osmosis.
Would Rachel have the
living with
patience?
me for 23 years.
does a non-comic book reader have the patience to sit here? Like Hush is a pretty long story. Like I'm sitting here looking
Yeah.
at the 20. It's 12. You know, it's massive. Like does a non-comic
It's
Yeah.
reader
breezy
want to
though.
sit
I mean,
there?
I read it in an afternoon.
Yeah, but someone who doesn't know how to actually read comic books, like
I
some
guess
people
there's,
don't
I
know how to
guess,
follow the bubble.
you know, the problem that I would have, and I would say as an argument, is that, yeah, you got all this and you probably could read it, but there's so much like almost flashback exposition that's
Mhm.
kind of spoon feeding the people to, you know, this person and such, and then kind of a background with Batman. I don't, you know, his either.
You don't think that
his,
was done with the intention to attract new readers, right? Kind of like saying, like,
I mean,
when, you
that's
know,
what's
Well,
one really
maybe.
cool thing about the book
Mhm.
is that, yeah, is like the flashbacks have that painterly watercolor style, which is uncommon to see Jim Lee do. It's a really cool thing that
it
elevates
looks
the
very
book.
interesting in the unwrapped edition as well.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of elevates the book beyond just, oh, it's just standard comic book art or whatever. It doesn't, and the book isn't, and while there is a lot of Batman history in the book, it's not super bogged down with like editor's note, read this story, editor's note, read that
True.
story.
True.
It's like there's enough, because I was paying attention to the dialogue when I reread it. There's enough there where you get the gist of what's going on and why. Like, even for me, like, I'm like, oh, Lex Luthor's president now. Okay, I remember that. Oh, Talia is like the head of like Daily Planet now. Okay, like I remember that stuff. But as a good like Batman Gateway book, it is also one of those things where I feel like somebody unfamiliar will read it, get the gist of it, but the things that they're curious about, it would probably encourage them to be like, hey, I want to know more about this Tim Drake Robin. I
That
want
would
to know more
just,
about
it
like,
would not be, it would not be one that I would like someone, if I get this, I get people I've over the years of the email, I've never read comics. They found Batman through the movies or whatever. What should I read? And then I'll give them like 5, and I've never said Hush. It just is not one. And that's not because I'm, you know, I just don't.
No, you give your top 5. That's fine.
There were, no, it may not be even something that I particularly love, but I think it's a good, you know, like,
new reader
it's a
friendly.
good one-off for people, for someone new
Right.
to read, to pick up what Batman is. So
You're just at the time, like I'm sure people asked you, Batman Ego is probably at the top of the list because of the Batman recently. Like, hey, look, read this. This is what you should be reading because this is what the film's kind of based on. But you know, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I would say, hey, check out Hush. I think it'd be a fun little adventure, but that's just me.
that's fair, and it's because it's that we all do things we like. I mean, you have a great nostalgic and love for it, and yeah, Hush, because you like. I mean, that's just human nature, and that's what any fan would do. You know, really about anything.
Do you guys have any favorite parts of the book? Anything really stand out that you always think of when it comes to the story specifically? Or is there something negative in some of it?
The thing that the two big fight scenes stick out to me, like the fight in the graveyard sticks out to me the most, is like the most like anticipated epic part of the book, you know, with an emotional core. The only negative I really have is like the look of the Joker. I just thought it was a little too stylized for me. Like it looked too weird. Like it was like a little bit past. He was more elfish or whatever than like a real person. And I think that like that design kind of morphed back over the years to like look a little bit more, you know. I feel like there's a degree of separation between like Jason Fabok Joker and Three Jokers and like Jim Lee Joker and Hush, you know.
I wasn't a fan of
more.
I wasn't a fan of the look of the Joker either. My favorite part of the story is what I like the most is the Batman Catwoman Bruce Selina story, subplot, or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of like the center of it, right? A little bit, but you know, I really like that, and I think it. You know, I could, if I was going to make a case, if I was trying to make an argument for it being like a up there classic for all the reasons in my brain, that reason why it was a classic is I think it kind of established the modern take, the modern interpretation of the Bruce Selina relationship. I I don't recall it being that way. It's kind of what I mean. Like, yeah, it's kind of the precursor. It's set up what we saw with Tom King and all that the Batcat thing, and then even that his Batman Catwoman maxi series, mini, whatever you want to call that. So yeah, I would say that the Catwoman Batman stuff in it, I really like quite a bit.
For me, like my two favorite parts obviously is the big Superman Batman confrontation. I love that. I love how he's the best at what he does, I'm the best at what I do, and then the big Riddler reveal at the end, because now that I reread it over and over again between the Lazarus dust and Batman, all that, I love how the Riddler's just pulling strings left and right behind the scenes. And I personally had no clue. I didn't see it coming, and I regret it because it's right there in front of me. And the only thing I don't like is just the design of Croc. I think it's too much. I think it's too much of mutant alligator giant thing. I kind of prefer the B-Taz wrestler with skin condition type deal.
You know what? Can I add one thing in here that I didn't like all that much, and I probably will get some flack. I won't get slack. Cut me no slack. Some flack. I don't like the line of, deep down, Clark is really a good person, and deep down, I'm not.
Yeah,
I don't like that, because he is.
I think it might have been Clow that gave me more context for that line of of course that's not true, but in that moment, that's what Bruce thinks of himself. Even though that's it's
only Clow could come up with something like that,
and that makes more sense to me. It's that's kind of a little peek into how Bruce is feeling at that moment. Although it's him saying that is not actually representative of what Batman really is. It's not like the omniscient narrator being like, Batman's not a good person. It's more like that's how he feels at that moment, and that's kind of cool actually. There's other stories like Venom, for example, where Batman gets to a really low place. And so it kind of shows a different little shade of the character. Not that I would want that line to become the pervasive, I want a poster that says, "Oh, Batman's not a good person" because of that line or much. You know what I mean?
It just seems that's a fair interpretation. It just seems like that kind of played up into Batman's, he's the anti-hero, Batman, dark, kick-ass, kind of guy.
Because I think in the animated version he does say it out loud, and I'm see, that's where it doesn't work.
All right. Yeah. Well, really quickly, how do you guys feel about the animated film? What are your thoughts on that before we wrap it?
I enjoyed. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, I can do it real quick. It's fine. It's good. It's I like the course, and this is a whole different topic. We've talked about it on other stuff before. I do like the inspired by animated movies as opposed to the straight up adaptations. So it's fine. I don't see Hush being I can't see Hush being a villain in a Batman live action Batman movie. I don't know what
speculation about it.
I mean okay, now you got me on a tangent here.
That's
if you're almost Hush's motivations in the original Hush comic book are similar to the Riddler's in the Batman.
Ooh.
Would you not agree or disagree? There's a little bit of similarity there.
There's some,
the jealousy.
Wouldn't you almost get the same type of plot or villain plot device with if you used Hush?
There would be a degree of reinterpretation there, for sure, if they did it.
So anyway, sorry,
it'd be interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if Reeves wants to, whatever Reeves wants to do, I will judge it when I see it. So that's kind of where I'm at with Reeves. I've
Yeah.
after one movie with Matt Reeves, I feel like I'm at the point of like after I was with like Dark Knight with Nolan, like it rises is in good hands. Like I trust you, like
Right.
just take care of business still and whatever with a strike
Yeah.
out.
As far as animated movie for me, like I do enjoy it. It was, I mean, we got to talk to some of the creative people behind it at the
Mr.
Comic-Con.
Copeland, yeah,
2019. I got to talk to the director. He was curious, like, "Oh, what did you think? Like, what did you think of the ending?" But like,
I remember.
it's been interesting because like I have now reread the book after seeing the animated film a while ago, and I think the animated film actually it gets a lot more right than it gets wrong. I just pointed out like the voice line I didn't like. They swap out Bane for Killer Croc, which is kind of like
I actually like that more.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm with you on
it
that.
makes sense. It makes sense. Like I didn't love that they like it kind of lessens Bane to me because like I wanted Bane to be more in a Nightfall thing, but again, that whole film also had to be shoved into the continuity they were making at the time, which in a weird way echoes what I mean. The Hush book was also within the actual DC continuity, so it's kind of an interesting look at adapting something and having some of the same parameters like affecting the outcome of the story. The only thing that swapping Batgirl for Huntress.
Yeah.
Like I like that better. When you read this book and you're
Huntress
like,
was very popular at the time of this book.
I know, but and you had Oracle. You didn't have Batgirl anymore. But reading it was a really cool way to kind of condense both the hacker and the hero into two characters in the book and obviously one in the movie. But then Batgirl kind of disappears like after the first third of the movie and she's gone and
basically after the crash side of thing.
Yeah, like I'm still torn on the just like I mean I didn't like the consolidation and making Riddler Hush. Like I didn't like that. Like it was a cool like twist, like, oh, you read the book and they changed it for the movie, but it was a little, I mean, it was a choice. They did it as good as you could do with that choice. Having said that, I really wish that they would have just like not done that and like tried to extrapolate further from what the book had, with Tommy Elliott instead of just completely discarding it, as a complete red herring. Like, cause then when you do make Riddler Hush, it just kind of like really validates Tommy Elliott as a character.
I like the anime movie a lot. Actually, I think it gets a lot of flack. I like the.
I feel like it gets too much flack compared to
mostly because I actually, like I said earlier, like Hush is kind of the throwaway, the decoy. Like he's just kind of a dog on a leash. Like Riddler's calling the shots, and when it ends up being Riddler, you're like, oh yeah, well it's not that much different than the actual book. Because I'm also like Bill. I like the inspire. I go back and forth. Actually, you give it to me and I like it. To be honest, like year one, I love year one, and I also like Hush because I appreciate the difference. Because with Hush, like when they killed Elliot, I was kind of shocked, and then I was like, oh wow. And in the end, like I wasn't expecting it. I didn't know it was coming. I kind of appreciate that for a movie because I've been reading the book for 20 years already, right? Like let's be honest, like the fact that you can give me something and it's a little fresh and like I told Copeland, like I liked it. I thought it was ballsy. Like it's an animated movie. Go for it. Definitely.
I just like it when, like with Gotham by Gaslight and, Hush and some of the others that you do things different. So, cause like year one, I really like the year one animated movie, but it's the freaking book,
It is. I mean, so's Dark Knight Returns, like
and Dark Knight Returns.
They're so good. Yeah.
Dark Knight Returns are good. Yeah.
Because what's his name? Gordon makes a horrible Batman. What's his name? What's the name of the mustacheless Gordon on that horrible TV show? What's his name?
The mustacheless Gordon. Oh, Vincent McKenzie.
Yeah, horrible Batman. He's the worst part about that thing. It'd be a lot better.
Mustacheless Gordon.
Yeah. Jeez. They gave him a mustache on the final episode.
At the end, didn't he have one? Yeah.
It was fake. It wasn't.
Tonight your feast is nearly over. Yeah, I mean
he was undercover and they gave him a fake mustache and he ripped it off. It was there for like a second.
Yeah.
But not to turn this into a Gotham show. Maybe I should. Maybe I'll have Bill rewatch 5 seasons.
Oh
of
my
Gotham.
goodness, that'll never happen.
Hell no.
I got him to reread Hush. Maybe I can get Bill to watch like BVS in Spanish.
No, like it'd be better.
No.
Honestly, like one season of Gotham Knights is better than the 5 seasons of Gotham.
Gotham Knights was a lot better than 5 seasons ago. I'm very surprised at how much better that show was than Gotham. But that's a show for another day. But I'm really happy we got to do this. This is something I've wanted to do for a couple of years now, and I'm glad you guys are on board for it because I love talking Batman comics. I can't do it enough, so I'm happy I was able to do it with somebody other than Ryan Lauer. Just kind of expand my comic book friends that I talk to because I get a lot of Lauer, and I think he gets too much of me. He's definitely tired of talking to me. So why don't you guys plug away while we end the show?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Just follow me on Twitter. I'm never calling it the other name. Follow me on Twitter at SMB_Ryan. Follow my Super Mario Brothers movie archive website at SMB movie. Breaking news, there is going to be a 4K release of the Super Mario Brothers movie that is coming out hopefully this year. We at the website are working on the special features. You can help donate to us to help fund some of the remaining things we're trying to get done for the features. There's a lot of fun things in the works, and really it's just depending on budget and time how much of those things make it on the disc. So if you're interested in donating to help that effort out, just go to SMB movie on Twitter, and we've got donation links and stuff on that, so check it out.
All right. Who goes next? Me or you?
Do I plug?
How this works.
You're the host. You go last.
All right. It's your website.
Yeah. I'm very simple. Go to batmanonfilm.com. Batman-on-film.com. I will also, if you want to follow Team BOF and me /Team BOF on Threads, you can go to Threads. It's at the Batman on Film. And yes, I'm not going to call Twitter anything other than Twitter.
As far as I know, you have to type in twitter.com to get to the website, so it's still called Twitter.
Yeah.
The logo is just a big X, right?
This could be a satellite show, but I mean,
is there a satellite show still going on?
Why? I know that Lauer's cooking one up for the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Nice.
So I think him and Micah are going to do that. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
And I'm doing Oppenheimer with my daughter.
There we go.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
That'll be fun.
That's good stuff. All right. If you want to follow me on social media, you can. Twitter, Instagram, Threads. If anyone still uses Mastodon, I'm still on that. And of course, Zack Snyder's favorite platform, Verra, at Pete Illustrated. You could follow podcast number 1, a news-based podcast I host with the champion of Long Island, Eric Holzman, at Straight Outta Gotham, at straight_O_G on Instagram and Twitter. Check out my Spider-Man podcast at Italians for Spidey on Twitter, the Italian Spider-Man Coalition. I have an episode up there. Check out batmanonfilm.com and Batman on Film YouTube. I have reviews and for toys and comic books over both sites, and you can catch up on Straight Outta Gotham there as well. And I'm trying to think. I think that's about it. So for Bill and Ryan, this was episode 214 of the Batman on Film podcast. And remember, authoritative, definitive, and the daggum real.
You've been listening to the original and official podcast of the Batman on Film website. Follow BOF on Threads at the Batman on Film. Follow BOF on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Batman on Film. To keep BOF up and running, go to patreon.com/BatmanOnFilm, or you can buy BOF a beer at buymeacoffee.com/TheRealBatmanOnFilm. For Jett and everyone at BOF, I'm announcer Rachel. Authoritative, definitive, the original. Batman on Film, founded in 1998.